Welcome to the Healthy Careers Podcast, where we help healthcare providers succeed on purpose. We take a conversational approach in learning from others who have been there and done that. Join us as we share expert insights from real people who are just like you, because we believe that success isn't just a destination, it's an intentional journey, and you don't have to do it alone.
All right, we are back with the Healthy Careers Podcast. Today I have somebody that is fantastic, well-known in the industry, and has some exciting news to share with us that many people already know, but also we're going to focus on how to pay off student loans, why, what freedom that brings you. But excited to welcome Shayne Foley to the podcast. He is also the co-founder of the PA Blueprint, which I also want to talk about that because so many people can benefit. Yes, check out the wonderful t-shirt. And if you didn't notice, okay, he's going to explain the logo as well because it's a stethoscope as the A, and I think that is brilliant.
It sure is. And I appreciate you calling it brilliant because other people would just be like, so what?
Hey, I got your creative juices flowing.
Yes, the minimal creative juices I have, they were flowing for that. It was a bit of a stretch for me. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, so awesome. I can start off by sort of introducing myself, talk about the PA Blueprint for a couple minutes in case people are unfamiliar.
Yeah.
So I am Shayne Foley. First and foremost, I am a certified physician assistant since 2012. So working on year 12 here. Not exactly a linear path for me, but that is the way I do it. We can talk more about sabbaticals, for instance. But 12 years in to practice, which has been great career choice. And then sort of year 9, 10 started to get a little itch to maybe do a little something else. Have been doing PA education as an adjunct professor for now 6 or 7 years, precepting as well. So very involved with PA education. And then reconnected with a former student of mine, Jordan Fisher, actually. And we shared some ideas that I thought could be something. And those ideas became the PA Blueprint ultimately. And those all revolve around career education because we felt like so many PAs were doing the PA program, learning the clinical stuff, and then just starting their careers kind of ignorant to a lot of the things that they needed to do, like how best to pass the PANCE, for instance, or pay off their student loans, or, negotiate their contracts, things like that. So we felt like we had a lot to add on that front, and we wanted to sort of make that program to practice transition something where people could find the education, find the advice, and ultimately have better careers.
Yeah. I think that's key because I've talked to so many people where they get these contracts that are just atrocious as new grads because hospitals and practices know that they can somewhat pull one over their heads. And you look at it and it's just, they don't know what they're signing or getting themselves into. I remember I spoke to one person who they told him he was going to be in the OR, I think 1 or 2 days a week. And he was ending up working close to 60, 70-hour work weeks because of the surgeries and the OR time. And that was nowhere written in a contract. And so it's like, if he had gotten that in writing, he would have been much better off to say, hey, wait a minute, But I think what you're doing is incredible. I actually first came across PA Blueprint on LinkedIn because you are so active on LinkedIn and partnering with different PAs of all different levels, but also, is it true in saying that most of who you're partnering with and helping are early career new graduate PAs?
Yeah, for the most part, because I think we all sort of learn trial by fire, and many of us sort of deeper in our careers, learn a little something here or there, think we might, kind of have it down or be having our best professional lives, which may or may not be true. But I think a lot of us convince ourselves that we're where we need to be. But those that are the hungriest for the knowledge and need the information the most are the folks who are making that transition from their program to their first job. And so, those are the folks that we're working with the most, that I think are, have their ears wide open, ears and eyes open to the kind of stuff that we're putting out there for information, education. And our goal is just to empower
Mm-hmm.
those folks to, from the jump, just, get ahead, get another few $1,000s on their contract right up front, or a sign-on bonus, get ready to make the right decisions or the best decisions for their student loans, things like that. So so those are
Okay.
kind of our people, those new grads for the most
Yeah.
part. And those are the folks I think are also most vulnerable, most prone,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, to signing a contract they don't quite understand. So those are the folks I think we can ultimately help the most.
100%. And I think there's not tons of people doing what you're doing, and more advocation early on, I think, is only going to lead to larger impact of practices and also hospitals understanding that PAs being utilized in the way that they should be. And by them advocating for themselves early on is only going to move that profession forward to where people aren't turning around and going, coulda, shoulda, woulda,
Yep.
Um,
Yep,
I'm
absolutely.
curious
And
to hear your thoughts. Oh, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say it just leads to potentially better retention, happier employees, right?
Yeah.
So that's another reason we started the PA Blueprint, is that ultimately we thought that if we could help our fellow clinicians out there, our fellow PAs and other healthcare
Mm-hmm.
professionals, they might be more satisfied in their careers, less burned out, et cetera. And then ultimately they actually might deliver better care. So
Yeah.
we could indirectly have impact on patient care. So
Mm-hmm.
thinking about that sort of inspires us to keep doing what we're doing.
Yeah. And you are doing a great job, because almost every single new grad that I go to connect with, it's like mutual connection. Shayne Foley,
Yeah.
I'm like, woo, okay.
Well, that's just the hustle piece, the LinkedIn hustle piece. So we can talk
Yes,
about that if you want to. But yes, that's me putting in some hours there to find people to connect with.
definitely. Awesome. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts, because I've asked a few people this and there's no wrong or right answer. But in your mind, do you think for a new grad to go out and specialize or stay broad, what do you think is best?
Great question. And this is the question we get. This is probably a top 5 question as we do our
Yeah.
presentations with PA programs. It's like, well, how do I
Mm-hmm.
know? And sometimes you don't. And if you don't know what specialty you want to be in, then staying broad probably makes the most sense. That way, if you
Yeah.
do primary care, or you're in the ICU or the emergency department, you're going to see lots of different complaints. So anything from ear pain to chest pain, and just about everything, rashes, etc. So you're going to sort of keep up your clinical knowledge in a lot of different systems. So that
Mm-hmm.
makes a job offer. I mean, people need to understand that, if you're getting this great job offer from urology, but you're not sure you want to do urology, but feel like you can't pass it up, take it. Absolutely take it.
Yeah.
And you could always sort of figure it out afterwards. Either way, you'll be
Yeah.
fine.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, I
I think
think people
that's,
have the two. Sorry, go ahead.
no, it's okay. Continue on. Sometimes this thing is delayed a little bit.
That's all right. I was just going to say, ultimately, I think the tools exist to make a specialty transition when you want to. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
absolutely fine. And people get a little nervous about recertification as well. Like, oh, well, I've been doing derm for 10 years and now I need to recertify. I don't remember anything about cardiology. But there are not only, like, the exam itself has changed and adapted to that to allow people to be able to sort of just take the test without doing a big course, but there are things like courses and resources out there where you could learn that stuff pretty quickly.
Yeah, agreed. I think too, some people almost have an imposter syndrome of what they feel they can't do as a new grad. And I think no matter what route you take, the beauty in being a PA is that you're not stuck in that specialty forever. So, I've placed people coming from urgent care and orthopedics, and people coming from one specialty where, they might not have done the specific cases or things that they've seen, but they're familiar with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
They've done injections, or they've done suturing, or they've done this or that. And so it's really just getting used to the environment and making sure that you have the support when it comes to whoever you're going to be collaborating with, more so than feeling like shying away from a specialty because you feel like you can't do it or that you don't have the experience, because most people starting out don't have experience in any of it. And if it's
Right.
a surgical subspecialty, you might not have had exposure during rotations. So I always like to ask that question because I think, like you said, there's a lot of people that's top of mind for them of what am I supposed to do, right?
Yeah, yeah. And if people really don't know, like I said, staying broad, I think makes a lot of sense at the
Yeah.
beginning. And maybe you
Mm-hmm.
wind up learning, through trial and error that I love neuro complaints. I seem to really gravitate towards those. So maybe that's a specialty eventually you can dig into or try to get into if you so choose.
Yeah. Yeah. Neuro is super fascinating to me. Not that I would ever be able to do it, but it's fascinating. And you mentioned top 5 questions. So I guess just to almost market how you could help maybe people that have some of the most common questions on their mind, and just in knowing that if you are listening to this podcast and one of these questions is resonating with you, reach out to Shayne and ask him about it, because that's what they are there for. That's what their company does. So from your standpoint, like, what are some of those common questions that people come to you with?
So what we talked about, whether I should specialize or not, we hear that all the time. We just discussed
Mm-hmm.
that. Another question from new grads typically is, should I negotiate? And our answer is always,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you should try.
Yeah.
No guarantees with that. There's not a lot of leverage as a new graduate, but more than I think people realize. And, if you look at the statistics on lifetime or career earnings for folks who don't station early on, whether that's the first job or first couple of years, I mean, it's staggering. It could be like $1 to $1.5 million by
Wow.
not trying to negotiate. Yeah, it's huge over the course of a career. So that's another
It's
question we
interesting.
get. Yeah. I mean, it's pretty wild. And most of the time, worst case scenario, you get no as an answer. We've heard and seen people get their offers rescinded, but it's pretty rare. So going
Yeah.
about it in the right way, and we help people go about it in the right way, where it's not sort of this contentious thing. It's
Yeah.
more of sort of an inquiry backed by
Mm-hmm.
information, more of an objective, like, well, the state averages for sign-on bonuses are this, so therefore I would like to have this amount as a
Mm-hmm.
sign-on bonus. So things like that. It's not
Yeah.
just trying to cook up something to say, well, I need this. I want this. Like,
Give me more money. Yeah.
Right, exactly. That's essentially what you're saying, but you could say it in a way that speaks their language, I suppose.
Yes. Yeah. And I always think too, if you bring data to the table and you bring explanation for it, right? And I've seen new grads negotiate, and I don't think there's anything wrong with anybody negotiating anything ever, because if you
Right.
don't ask, you don't know. And a
Right.
lot of times there might be wiggle room on a sign on. There might not be wiggle room in a base structure, because a lot of hospital system, for example, they have a standard rate, right? And it's in a chart. And if you've
Yep.
got this amount of experience, this is what you're paid. Now, if
Yep.
you're in a private practice, you're going to have a little bit more, flexibility there, I've seen. But maybe you can work out something with your hours, or maybe you can work out something with just your general schedule, and or sign-on bonuses or CME coverages or paid time off. I mean, there's so many different things that go into it outside of just the square.
Mm-hmm.
And advocating for yourself, like you said, from the start is always a good move. So if you are somebody that's thinking about negotiating and needs some help with that, Shayne's definitely the person to go to.
Yes,
All right.
thank you.
What
Yeah,
else?
we've been doing a lot of that recently, a lot of negotiating. We've had quite a few people step
Yeah.
up and taking them on as clients, and it's been really successful. I mean, we had confidence going in, but we have way more now after doing quite a few of these. We're really helping people get thousands of dollars more easily, and it's just we know what to look
incredible.
for. We're reading over contracts line by line and really working with these folks. And our goal is to empower them for the future if they want to take it on themselves later, right? Just how to make this an educational session as well. So we work with them. We mentor them as well. And then, if they want to come back on another offer some other time, great. But if we have empowered them to maybe do it on their own next time, that's a win as well. So we feel
Yeah,
good about that. So it's been fun, and we really like doing those. Jordan and I, that kind of one-on-one gets to our like
hmm
coaching, mentoring aspect that we really enjoy and we're passionate about.
for sure. Because you said you're an adjunct professor, right? At
Yeah,
UNE?
so it was before, not as much
Okay,
anymore, but I
got it.
was when I was in Portland, Maine.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful
But now
area.
we get to, yeah, it is. But now we get to work with like up to, I think, almost 40 programs at this point.
Wow.
So yeah, we do virtual presentations and basically sort of
hmm
giving them just the high level view about things like student loans and compensation and what to expect. So, which is
Yeah.
great. And we're kind of hoping, and this is maybe a plug out there for the folks who can make these changes, but we're hoping that some of that gets integrated into the required curriculum for PA
Yes.
programs. Now, there's not a lot of room there, so I understand it's packed already. So I don't know if it'll
hmm
get in there anytime soon, but our fingers are crossed that
That'd be
we can at
great.
least provide that from programs. But we're hoping that it also matches up with required curriculum at some point.
Yeah. It's like I think it's a meme or something that says something about, I'm so glad this tax season that I learned how to line dance in high school and middle school.
Hmm.
I think a lot of PA school, of course, it equips you to take the PANCE exam. And I know that you also offer that in terms of helping them prepare and make sure they ace it. But I think so much of it is focused around the test rather than the
Yep.
actual application. And so
Yep.
that's where those rotations and just working with somebody like you or somebody that is a tenured PA who knows the challenges that they're going to see, because you're not just going to come out of PA school and know everything, no matter
Yep.
what specialty you choose. Even if you choose primary care and you had 2 rotations doing that, you're still going to be lost at points, and that's okay. That's
Yeah.
normal.
Yeah, absolutely. It's 100% normal. And so, again, we can help people bridge that gap. We can work with them, answer their questions. Those
Yeah.
presentations have been fantastic because people then have a face. We've presented to them. They reach
hmm
out with questions. It's great. I mean, they've been really good feeders for us for questions and whatnot.
hmm
And even some of our clients as well have come from that. So that's been really, really good
It's
for
awesome.
us. And yeah. So
Yeah.
it's been good, and ongoing relationships with some people. I mean, some people been working with for 1 to 2 years as individuals through sort of the
hmm
whole course of their the start of their career, and then we're having a new cohort of students with each program we work for every year. So we're happy that we're
Right.
able to sort
Right.
of instill that knowledge early on, and at
Early
least
on.
they file it away, for later when the
hmm
timing's right.
Definitely. Definitely. And you mentioned student loans. So I want to talk about that because I think that is top of mind for both graduates and people that have maybe already been in the profession for 10, 15 years and are still staring down the barrel of X amount in student loans. So, from your perspective, you just paid off your student loans, which is incredible. And so
Yes.
many people are probably watching and listening this and saying, okay, how and what did you do? Right. So, I want to know the how, the what, the why, the when. Like, just give us, I guess, an overarching summary of how you were able to do that within 12 years of practicing.
Yeah, so I mean, it probably would have been sooner, but again, following a nonlinear path, taking sabbaticals, I've put my loans on deferment a couple times for
Yeah.
that, and so it would have been, significantly earlier, but that was a priority for me to continue to do that. So, so that's why it's taken 12 years versus 10, because the 10-year thing
Mhm.
is the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Plan, which is what I just um, completed. So I completed the
Gotcha.
requirements back in November, and then it takes
hmm
usually a couple of months for them to process everything. Nothing moves quick with the federal government. So, but they paid off the rest of my loans, which was
No.
great. I know,
Yeah.
shocker. I see that as a headline. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I got there and got that news just a few weeks ago, which is great, which
It's
is really
incredible.
great. But yeah, it does feel good. It's nice to see, the net worth go up a little bit, and just know that now I have even more freedom with employers. So before they had to be nonprofits, and that's part of the deal for the public service loan forgiveness plan. But now it's anybody who wants to hire Shayne Foley. I will be looking for a job come 2025.
Listen, I've got your back. All right.
I appreciate
I can help
that.
you. You forget that this is what I do.
No, I don't forget, and you do a great job at it, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah. So public service loan forgiveness was what was right for me. Part of that was just starting off and first couple months practicing and just realizing like I was in the red on my books, right? I'm like, wow, I thought I would feel rich. I'm a PA now. And that just wasn't the case between the student loans. Right. Just kidding. Right. Because, you know, I was making probably no more than $40,000 prior to PA school, but my debt was low. So like, I was living okay. And then I started at 82.5 for my first job. Keep in mind, this was 12 years ago, but my my debt was like through here. So I wasn't feeling any more rich than I was when I made $40,000. So I quickly had to figure out, well, what do I do? I'm scrambling here because this isn't sustainable. I'm drowning here. And so then I found public service loan forgiveness and income-driven payments to lower that so I could actually feel like I could live my life a little bit. And I'll try to give it the short timeline, which is a couple deferments mixed in there for sabbaticals. Almost refinanced my loans back in 2020, 2021. But the public service loan forgiveness program was not looking so hot. There was lots of bad press about it.
Interesting that it wasn't going to actually pan out. Interesting. Well, okay, I did not know that.
Yeah. Only 1% of people at some point were shown to actually get approved, even though they were, had met the criteria, or so they thought. So it wasn't looking good. So I went over to SoFi and was like, all right, what do you got for me? Ooh, a nice interest rate. All right, let's do that. So I signed all the paperwork except on the dotted line, which I did not intend to not sign on that dotted line, just missed it. And so ultimately it was like, where are my loans? You guys should be billing me now, right? And they told me like, no, you didn't actually sign on it. So this was like 6 to 9 months into the forbearance for the pandemic. And so at that point I had more questions, being like, is this actually what I want to do? Let's ride out this forbearance thing and see what happens. I could always refinance later. But ultimately that forbearance lasted 3.5 years, which was about 42 payments out of the 120. So why would I have, refinanced?
Exactly.
So I just wrote it out. Mine. Yeah. So I just wrote it out and paid those last 2 payments and donezo.
That's incredible. Yeah. Well, I'm 10, 11. I don't even know what year I graduated. I only had maybe $40,000 in student loan debt. I never went to graduate school, and I paid off about half of them. And I think I've got about 15 left. And I was really hoping that I would get mine paid off, but I don't think I'll be in that bucket, unfortunately. But it's also, I mean, student loans, it affords you to be able to do what you do, right? Especially in medicine. It's like some people look at it from a standpoint of like, oh, I wish I never did this because I'm having to live this lifestyle where I'm having to pay X amount per month for my student loans. But I mean, it's worth it in the end because it affords you the lifestyle that now you don't have that payment. You don't have to worry about it. And it's just, like you said, going to add back into what you can save in your overall net worth of not having that debt.
Absolutely. And the key to that is, yes, you can pay them down pretty quickly. Some people very aggressively, other people 10 plus years. But, if people allow lifestyle creep to happen, where they're spending a lot more, not really thinking about it as much, like those are the folks who it's going to take 15, 20, 30 years. And some of that could be life circumstances. You had a medical problem, you have medical bills, whatever it is, children, whatever it is that, is now a higher cost to you. But generally speaking, I think with a PA salary, which is pretty good compared to the rest of the population, most folks should be able to pay down their loans relatively quickly, not have them linger for decades.
Yeah, I agree. I've got to pay mine off. You're inspiring me.
Do it. I mean, what inspires people are the numbers. That's the thing. Like, it's just this abstract
Yeah.
thought of being like, well, that sounds nice if I paid off my loans. But when you actually see how much money you save,
Mm-hmm.
in interest, you realize like, oh, by paying off that 15,000, I'm actually maybe saving myself
Yeah.
$3,000,
X amount.
$5,000 over
Yeah.
time. And the numbers get bigger and bigger. So if it's, $100,000, I mean, you may wind up paying 1.5 times that, 2 times that if you really
Exactly.
draw it out.
Yeah. My dad's, he was a personal finance teacher, and he's big on all of that. And he showed me like the rich dad, poor dad, and if you invest this and if you save 50 cents for every dollar. But I mean, it's so true that life circumstances, I had paid off half of mine, and then I went through a divorce and I had to move, and it was like all these different things that I started a business. So it's like, I need to have the money in the bank right now. But, for everybody, their situation is different. But I think it's
Mhm.
incredible that you were able to take sabbaticals and also still pay stuff off within a really good time frame. So kudos to you for that.
Yeah, thanks. And part of that was, just by design, just wanting to say like, all right, well, what's the best way where I can feel like I can live my life? I don't want to just put my head down,
Mm-hmm.
make student loan payments for 10 years
Yeah.
and then come up for air and wonder what's next, So I
Mm-hmm.
figured with the income driven payments, I'd pay less per month, ultimately would have some forgiven if it all went to plan, and
If
I'd
you were that
have a little bit more.
1%.
Right, exactly. But also then I had more to invest and live off of, etc. And so I felt like I could kind of live my life in these 12 years as well. So that to me
Definitely.
made the most sense. But for some people, if they want to go very aggressive, live cheaply, do some extra shifts or whatever it is, have a side hustle and pay off their $150,000 in 3 years, kudos. If
Yeah,
that's their plan. Everyone's plan will probably look a little bit different, but
definitely.
there's always a plan that optimizes it for each individual.
Definitely. Yeah, I agree. And sabbaticals. So this is something that I feel a lot of people don't think. I always thought sabbatical was only if you were a college professor. I had a friend growing up whose parents were college professors, and every 7 years, I think it is, they get a
Usually like
sabbatical.
7. Yeah.
And I remember thinking that's so cool because they went and they stayed in Costa Rica. And I was asking my parents, like, how come we can't do that? Like you guys are
Totally.
teachers in public schools. But I think people forget it doesn't matter what you do. You can always stop and live your life a little bit and get back to it. Like you're not going to atrophy on all your skill sets because you take a career break. And you
Hmm.
have shown this time and time again. And so I'd love to understand the mindset around it, and also just how you've gone about doing that. And then also sharing with us the upcoming sabbatical you're taking.
Yeah, so I love to talk about sabbaticals, just because I
Yeah.
think more people should be doing them. I think healthcare in general is just ripe for sabbaticals because many of us do make a decent living.
Mm-hmm.
We do have student loans and things, so sometimes there's a lot of logistics you have to figure out, and that can feel intimidating. But there's also a high level burnout. So, it's
Yes.
good to take a break. And oftentimes, burnout recovery takes a lot longer than people think. It's usually not just your 2-week vacation or even a 4-week break. Sometimes it's months and
Yeah.
months to fully recover. And so I fully
Mhm.
support it and just live it myself with these sabbaticals. So I've taken a few. I mean, if you count the one right after PA school, 1, 2, 3. This will be my 4th coming up here,
Okay.
and I just plan on continuing. And part of that mindset is feeling like I am mortal, right? So who knows if I will live until I'm 65 and ready to retire at that classic age. I'd hope to retire much earlier than that, but who knows? Nothing's guaranteed. I mean, we see that in medicine, right? I
Every
mean,
day. Yeah.
I have so many stories I could tell of patients getting terrible diagnoses, sometimes fatal, in their
Mhm.
prime. And so we see it. And we saw that at the beginning of the pandemic. So many people in general,
Yes.
but practitioners exposed and would die. I mean, some of them were very healthy. And so that stuck with me. And the thought back in 2020 of like, oh, am I going to get COVID and die? But it
Yeah,
didn't keep
it
me
was
from
a
going to
scary
work.
time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But I was like, well, I felt a calling to be like, okay, I need to help with this in whatever way that I possibly can. But to think
Hmm.
like that really like opened my eyes. And so, I want to try to live life outside of work every couple years. I think that it's
Yeah.
healthy for me. It's healthy for my family. And as I said, nothing's guaranteed. So I'm trying to accumulate these non-work life experiences at a time when I can do them.
Yeah.
So just listened recently to the book Die with Zero, which has become popular with a lot of people in
Oh, I'm
like
going
the
to write that
financial
down.
independence. Yeah, Die with Zero. It's a great concept of really just not thinking about how much money you accumulate, but how many memories over time that defines your life. The
Yes.
money in the end isn't all that important, so you should spend your money. And there are one of the best sort of like subplots in there, I guess, is that there are seasons of life, and that at 42 as I am, I may not want to go do the backpacking trip in Europe and stay at hostels. Like that season may be over for me. I, I mean,
Yep.
especially with my 2-year-old, he's probably not going to be too keen on it. But
No. No.
so something like that just doesn't appeal anymore. So that was something, that time is probably past for me, but an experience that would be amazing to do for other folks. And so for us,
Hmm.
we're going to try to just travel or whatever it is we're going to do, staycations, whatever in the future. I mean, our ultimate goal is to kind of live on each continent,
That's
because
awesome.
why not? Right. Every 5 years,
Yeah.
go to a different
Life is short.
continent, try it out, travel around, try other things, non-PA things, and
Hmm.
just to make the most out of life, because once again, nothing is guaranteed. So I don't want to just work for 30
Yeah.
years and then look up and realize, hey, my knees hurt and I don't have as much energy as I used to have. So all those hikes I wanted to do, they're going to
Yeah.
look a lot different.
It's interesting because as I've gotten older, I've always been somebody that has been money motivated, and I come about that honestly. But I'm also very driven by helping others, and I've always said that I wanted to do something that helped others. But I didn't want to be a teacher because I saw the way my parents lived, and they provided us a great life. Don't get me wrong. But
Mm-hmm.
we didn't go on a lot of vacations. We didn't get to travel tons and tons. And my parents raised 3 kids while being public school teachers and owning a restaurant. Like they killed it and they did an awesome job. I think I turned out all right and my brothers turned out all right. And,
Yeah.
but I think about it and I have to remind myself of that same thing most days because I worked in corporate America where I just felt like I was a gerbil in a wheel. And I think a lot of people in healthcare feel the same way. You're going to work to grow somebody else's pockets and you want to help people and you're passionate about what you do. But then you realize the day that I quit is 5 days away from them replacing me. Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And if we live as if our job is our only identity or our job is our only purpose in life, we miss out on things that when we're on our deathbed, no matter what age that is, you're not sitting there thinking like, I should have worked a little bit more. I should have made some more money.
Yeah.
Like it is about what you're leaving behind, not from a financial standpoint, but from just an impact standpoint, right? Like whose lives have you touched? Who have you impacted? And what memories you've made. And if your memory and is sitting behind a computer screen or being in a hospital walls for most of your life, I mean, there's more to it than that. And I think so many people need to have your mindset around it, myself included, of
Mm-hmm.
just allowing yourself to take that time to recoup and to enjoy what you work so hard for, right? Like money
Absolutely.
is, you can
Right.
always make it back.
Yep. Absolutely. And I've had no problems getting jobs. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the things people are worried about, like, what about that, gap on your CV? Like when you put that down, does that look bad? Is that something? And I have found it to be just the opposite. I found it to
Yeah.
be a wonderful talking point, a point
Mm-hmm.
of curiosity for people who are my potential employers. I mean, it's something that we start with, like, well, what are you doing? You know, I vividly remember taking phone call for where I currently work, actually, for my first
Yeah.
interview, and we were in our RV on the coast of Oregon. And I told them that right away. They're like, you know, so where are you? You know, that they wanted to know because they already knew I was on sabbatical. I'm like, I am
Yeah.
on the coast of Oregon, staring out into the ocean and talking to you guys. So life is good. And right
Yeah.
there, like, I have separated myself from the pack. Obviously, I've got to deliver on their questions they're going to ask me, and they want to hire
Yeah.
me. But right away, I'm memorable, at least.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a great talking point. It just like loosened up the conversation right away. And it's
Yeah.
been no problem with getting licensed or anything. And in fact, I love on like when I have to renew my license and you have to basically list like all your jobs and your time from when you started practicing. And then when I get to
Yeah.
those gaps, those sabbaticals, I love like writing too much detail in there. Like travel in an RV with my wife and my dog Pippa. We went to here, we did this. I mean, it's so
Yeah.
unnecessary, but I just think it's really fun.
Well, it
So
makes you
yeah, so that
human. Yeah.
right, right, exactly. And in fact, when went to the something with my license, I had to go into the office in Vermont,
Yeah.
and when I went in there, and she's like, "What is your name?" And I was like, "Shayne Foley," and she said, "Oh, you're the." You're the person that was on the sabbatical, right? I mean, out of probably like hundreds of files, she was like, "You're the sabbatical person with the dog and stuff." I'm like,
Yep.
yes, I am.
That's
That's
me.
me.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
So a lot of those things people are worried about, their fears of how it could derail their career. It's just not true. I'm
Mm-mm.
hopefully proof of that. I think I'm very employable. I've had an awesome
Yeah.
career so far, and I bet it's going to continue to just get more interesting and more fun. And having the time to step away from
Mm-hmm.
the clinical side makes me a different person by a little bit each time,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
sort of resets my goals, but it gives me the space to do that. And you don't have that space on a 2-week vacation in Mexico. You know, like
Mm-hmm.
it's just not the same thing. You need like immersion into a different lifestyle where work is not
Yeah.
really much of a factor.
Yeah. I talk about that a lot because if I'm stressed or I'll have a bad day, I'll call my mom or, a friend and they're like, well, just close up shop early today. And I'm like, that's really not going to fix the stress. So my boyfriend and
Hmm.
I talk about when we do eventually get married, because we're not going to do the whole wedding thing, that we'll just take a month off. And I know a month doesn't seem like it could be long enough, but it'd be the longest that I've ever taken in my career off of work, of just being able
Yeah,
to mentally shut it down and say, I don't need to worry about a candidate today, or I don't need to answer a client today. And I can live my life and not have to be at a beck and call for somebody, right?
yeah,
And not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's just that reset that when you get back to it, you're excited to get back to it. You don't feel burnt out. You're like,
exactly.
oh, I can't wait to see what's changed or what's happened or where so and so is at with things. And I think, like you said, you just come back with a new mindset and with experiences that have brought you back to your wholesome self.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. And I think we've all experienced where like you take a long weekend and maybe you feel slightly recovered and better, or you take 2 weeks to 4 weeks and you feel great for those first couple days, but then it all kind of sinks in again. So imagine what you
Settles
feel like
back.
after 3 months, 6 months, 12 months away. It's a bit intimidating. I'm not going to lie. It's very hard
Yeah.
to restart, but so worth it, for that
Yeah.
time in between those memories. And you could still work. You want to work as a PA, but like you might just find like I'm passionate about international medicine, so I'm going to go work in fill in the blank country. So you can
Mm-hmm.
still be a PA. I'm not saying it should be complete separation from what you do in the day to day, but it just might look a lot different. It might be something that you've been wanting to do for a long time.
Yeah. And I do want to cover, because I'm a recruiter and I look at career gaps on resumes, not often, but it's sometimes there, whether it's somebody that was a stay-at-home mom. And I think a lot of females fear that when they're in medicine of, I cannot take time away because when I go back into the workplace, what are they going to think, right? And I just want everybody that's listening to this to know, whether you're a mom, whether you're not, whether you just need time because you're burnt out, if a place is going to judge you for taking time to reset so that you can come back stronger, or if a workplace is judging you or not hiring you because you went on a sabbatical with your family, don't work for that place. Like, that in itself is a red flag, and you don't want to work
Totally.
for them anyway. So the right people are going to understand and say, oh, that's really awesome, tell me about it. And then move on to focusing on what matters, which is your clinical skills and your ability to be of value to the practice. And that's it. So
Absolutely.
if somebody,
Yes.
just don't fear that. If that's what's stopping you, do not fear the resume, please.
Yeah. Yeah. Amen. We say that all the time to folks, it's just like,
Yeah.
well, what if we do, what do we do if I mentioned like rescinding a job offer if you try to negotiate, like in that situation, what do we do? Like, well, be glad they just showed their hand. They're not
Yes.
willing to partake in a normal business practice. So
Yeah.
that is very odd, and you probably don't want to work for them anyway. Or if they're judging you for taking time off for yourself, then what does that say about self-care and how they're going to treat you as an employee? Like,
The
it tells you
culture.
everything. They just showed their hand. Like, well, I appreciate knowing that now and not later.
Yes, 100%. I agree. Awesome. Well, I have so many questions when it comes to the sabbaticals and everything, but I do try to keep this to a consumable, commutable episode. So we'll wrap things up. But if you're listening to this podcast and you feel either like you have one of the questions that Shayne mentioned, whether you're a new grad or experienced, or maybe you're thinking about a sabbatical and want to talk with Shayne about how you might be able to take those steps, I think there's probably a lot of more financial fear than anything else when it comes to that, I would gather, of people saying, how am I going to make that work with my lifestyle? Right. So, reach out to him. He's on LinkedIn. He's all over LinkedIn. And obviously the PA Blueprint is a great place as well for new grads. And Shayne has been somebody that I've counted on as running questions by about the industry, certainly an expert in all things PA related. So I really appreciate you coming on the show today, and hopefully we can do another podcast at some point and dive a little bit deeper into some other things.
Yeah, we should do one while I'm on the road, because we
Yeah.
are, I'm not doing a complete and utter break from work, especially PA Blueprint.
Okay.
Clinical, yes, but PA Blueprint not. So we just got our Starlink satellite, so we are ready for
Perfect.
internet. I may be, you may want to interview me when I'm in some really special place like Banff or someplace like that, Grand Teton National Park, but we could do an
Yes.
on location one if you wanted to.
That'd be awesome. Of you just with the Grand Canyon in the back.
Yes. Yes. Perfect. I'll climb down the Grand
Yes.
Canyon and to do it
Hopefully
from
you'll
there
get cell
on the Colorado
service.
River. Yeah, exactly. No, but I do appreciate everything that you said, those compliments. That really appreciate that and take that to heart. And I appreciate everything you're doing, Madison, with your podcast now, and just being a recruiter that people can know, can trust. So you're doing a great job, and I
Thank
fully
you.
support you. Yeah, and I
Thank
thank
you
you
so
for
much.
having me on. Yeah, just allowing me to maybe tell my story a little bit, and hopefully it inspires folks, at least gives them something to chew on for a little bit, and hopefully it sort of empowers them or gets them to that point where they can sort of do more of a career design for themselves, and really dream that up, but then better yet, take action on it. That's the key.
Yep. Well, you are in the driver's seat of your careers. I think a lot of healthcare professionals forget that. And I think you are the walking, talking representation that you call the shots, not the healthcare system.
Yep. Power to the people. Power to the PAs.
Yes, I like it. Awesome. Cool. I will link all of Shayne's information in the show notes here for you all. And again, Shayne, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Healthy Careers Podcast, where we provide a platform for you to ask hard questions and get real answers. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and share it with your friends. Stay tuned for more episodes every other Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern.